Every single year on January 1st, something pretty amazing happens. It's like a giant treasure chest of creativity creaks open. All these books, films, songs, and pieces of art, they suddenly shed their copyright protection and become totally free for everyone to use. We call it Public Domain Day, and it's basically a massive annual inheritance for all of us. So let's take a look inside. Okay, so here's a fun one for you. What in the world could possibly connect some of the most iconic movie monsters, the ones that basically invented horror cinema, with some of the most famous cartoon characters ever drawn? I mean, on the surface, they feel like they're from completely different universes, right? Well, the answer is that their original adventures, their very first appearances, are all joining the public domain. It means that the legal lockbox that's kept them protected for decades is finally swinging open. These foundational stories now belong to all of us, to use, to share, and to totally reimagine. So in this explainer, we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the incredible works that just became free. Then we'll get into what public domain actually means. We'll check out how that copyright clock works, why this is such a huge deal for creators, and finally, my favorite part, we'll get a sneak peek at the absolute legends who are graduating into our shared culture next. All right, let's start with the big idea here. What exactly is the public domain? The best way to think about it is like a vast Creative Commons. It's a library of material that belongs to absolutely everyone. So here's the bottom line. It's the official end of a work's copyright. It's that moment when a story or a song or a film stops being private property and becomes public cultural heritage. It becomes a building block that anyone, and I mean anyone, can use to create something new, without needing permission and without paying a cent. And that brings us to the really exciting part. Who just joins this amazing Creative Commons? Well, the class of 2025 is an absolute blockbuster. It is packed with works from 1929 that have been shaping our culture for almost 100 years. And just look at this list. The variety is incredible. You've got the debut of legendary comic characters like Popeye and Tintin. We get even more Mickey Mouse cartoons, including the one where he speaks for the first time, yelling, "Hot dogs, hot dogs." Then you've got these landmark novels from Hemingway, Virginia Woolf, and Faulkner, plus the iconic song Singin' in the Rain. It's just an amazing snapshot of a single year. And this is just perfect. It shows you the exact moment of creation. When Popeye first shows up in the comic, another character asks him, "Are you a sailor?" And his gruff, iconic personality is just born in that one perfect line. "D'you think I'm a cowboy?" That original, pipe-chomping, tough-as-nails sailor is now free for any creator out there to use in a brand new story. But remember, this is not a one-and-done deal. Not at all. Every single year, on January 1st, that clock strikes midnight, and another full year's worth of culture joins the public domain. It's this continuous process that keeps our shared heritage growing and evolving. Okay, so how does this whole thing work? How do we know when a copyright's time is up? Now, copyright law can get unbelievably complicated, but for a huge chunk of 20th century stuff here in the US, it really boils down to one simple number. 95 years. That's it. For pretty much anything published in the United States between 1923 and 1977, the copyright lasts for a flat 95 years from the day it was published. It's a nice, predictable countdown. So let's see how that plays out with a real example. Let's take Dashiell Hammett's classic detective novel, The Maltese Falcon. It was published way back in 1930. You start that 95-year clock right then. And where do you land? January 1st, 2026. That's the day the original story of Sam Spade becomes public property. Now, it's worth pointing out that this 95-year rule is specific to a certain period of U.S. law. A lot of other places, especially in Europe, do it differently. They use a standard called life of the author plus 70 years. And that's why a book or a movie can be public domain in one country, but still be under copyright somewhere else. It gets tricky. Okay, so we know what it is and we know how it works, but so what? Why should we really care? Well, because the public domain isn't just some legal footnote. It's the literal engine of creativity and culture. This quote from William Faulkner, whose absolute masterpiece, The Sound and the Fury, just hit the public domain, just says it all. Our old stories don't just fade away. They stick around. They shape who we are today. And the public domain makes sure they're not just memories, but living, breathing material we can all still work with. And you can see this creative cycle everywhere. I mean, the great irony is that some of the biggest champions of long copyright terms, like Disney, literally built their empire on public domain stories like Snow White and Cinderella. From the musical Wicked to all the modern versions of Dracula, our culture is constantly remixing and building on these old foundations. The public domain isn't the enemy of copyright, it's the other half of the ecosystem that fuels all creativity. So, what does this actually mean for you right now? It means you can take these characters and these stories and just run with them. You can make your own Popeye cartoon. You can write a new Tintin adventure. You could use a song from 1929 in your movie without paying a dime in licensing fees. The possibilities are, and I'm not kidding, endless. And here's the really cool part. Thanks to that predictable 95-year clock, we don't have to guess what's coming next. We can literally look into the future and see which icons of pop culture are lining up to join the public domain. And this is where it gets really, really exciting. Next year, 2026, we get the original versions of Betty Boop and Pluto. A few years after that, Donald Duck makes his entrance, and then the 2030s are gonna unleash the golden age of superheroes. The original Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman are all set to become public property. Just think about that for a second. In 2027, those classic Universal monster movies, the original Dracula and Frankenstein, they become available. And right after that, the very foundations of the superhero genre get handed over to the public. Our shared cultural toolbox is about to get some of its most powerful and iconic parts ever. So these characters, these stories, they're not just something for you to watch or read anymore. They're something for you to build with. They are officially part of your creative inheritance. The only question left is, what are you going to create with them?